What's going on, everybody? My name is Nick.
My name is Dave.
And this is the Deep Dive, and we are back. It's been a while since we've been back.
I've been on vacation.
That's
but
right.
I'm home now. You and Sarah did a couple of weeks, so
we did.
But it's good to
get our namesake back in order.
That's
we're
right.
back on the right sides of the. Well, actually, we're not on the right sides of the. I should be over there, according to our logo.
You're being a little picky.
Okay. I am, but. It's good to see you. I'm glad we're back here, back in action doing the podcast. And this week we're talking about the Syrophoenician woman.
Correct.
Did I say it right?
You did. Perfect.
Thank you. Okay. I've been practicing, and I think it would be a very good Scrabble word if I could ever get that many letters.
Oh, gosh. Awesome. Yeah.
Right.
It's a proper noun, though, so I'm not sure
Oh,
it'll work.
that's a good point.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we got some stuff to talk about. Let's get into it. All right, Dave, why don't you give us a little breakdown of your vacation before we jump into it, though? You got to go across the pond over to Barcelona.
I did. Teresa and I took a really big trip this year for our vacation. We went to Europe, and so a couple of days in Paris, and then we went down to Barcelona, wearing the Barcelona T-shirt today.
Oh, look at you.
And then we got on a cruise ship there, which went around a little bit of the Mediterranean. Then we were back in Barcelona a couple of days. So it was 2 weeks that I was gone.
Yep.
And I'm sure a lot of this stuff will come out in sermons and stuff. Because a great trip. One thing I was thinking about, it probably felt like I was hardly gone. Because I've been around here and people went on vacation and I was going like, what, you were gone last week?
Yeah.
But when you're in a place, vacation like we particularly did, where we were like in a different country with a different language just about every day.
Yep.
It seemed a lot longer than 2 weeks, even though it was 2 weeks. So
I can tell you around here, there was a time when we all kind of looked at each other like, wait, when is Dave actually coming back? he has a thing coming up, and then Jackie was like, I'm feeding his cat till Tuesday. We're like, good, okay, he is coming back.
yeah. So that is what Jackie kept our cat, so
That's right.
She would know. So anyway, but it's good to be back, and it was long enough that I really was ready to get back. And the last couple of days of vacation, you know how it is. You start turning your toes like, I got to get this stuff done when I get back, and part of that is panic, but just part of it is just kind of the renewed energy of kind of seeing things a little bit different. So
yeah, what you can get into.
And we got such a great fall ahead of us here at Hickory Flat.
Really do. Got a lot of cool things coming up. And
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you before we jump in, and I promise this will be the last thing. When you go places, do you have a hard time turning off your kind of pastor brain a little bit to find some of these illustrations and stuff? Or are you always like, everywhere you go, you're like, oh, I'm going to use that, and I'm going to use that? Does that make sense?
I don't know. It's just kind of the way that I am.
You're wired?
It's kind of the way that I'm wired and the way I think about things.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I necessarily say that would make a good sermon illustration.
Yeah.
But, when we went, and this will come up later on, but like we went into some churches and we went into the most beautiful church, one of the most holy places I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
And then as I just sort of heard about the building of that and the history of it, I was going like, wow, this will preach.
Yeah.
So, that happens. And other things just, that's how life is.
Understood.
So,
Well, Dave, I'm sure we're going to hear more about the trip through sermon illustrations, through conversations, all that good stuff. But you got the chance to come back and preach this Sunday, and you preached about the Syrophoenician woman, which is probably a story a lot of us maybe not even have even heard, but one that we probably don't know well. So
honestly, as I was planning out sermons, I got to this month, and we have Bishop D's coming in a couple of weeks, and it was going to be kind of an odd month anyway because I was already missing a week, so it wasn't fitting into a sermon series. So what I did was I pulled from the lectionary, and this was one of the lectionary texts that came up. I've never preached on this before, and I never heard a sermon on this before. And as you hear the text, you understand why. It is one of those difficult passages of Scripture. Some of the difficult things that Jesus said that just don't really kind of fit into the way we think about Jesus. And
Right.
as we get into that, you want to go ahead and get into it?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. So in this text, well, let me just, I'll start a little bit back before the text that I actually read on Sunday was,
Yeah.
and give a little of the context, because I think that's important
Sure.
to understand what's happening. But Jesus is there in the Galilee region, around the Galilee, Sea of Galilee, sometimes called Lake Gennesaret. But he is there in this region, preaching and teaching and having these sort of run-ins with the Pharisees. And so the Pharisees have jumped all over them, and his disciples in particular, because they weren't washing their hands correctly. They had this sort of ceremonial rituals that they were supposed to do as they washed their hands. And they were saying they were defiling themselves because they weren't washing their hands right. And Jesus goes into this thing saying, like, you guys are the Pharisees, you're so missing the point on that. It's not what goes into you that defiles, it's what comes out of you. And so he's basically saying, you need to be practicing what you preach, and if you're not, you're saying all these little ticky little ceremonies that you're doing is what makes you holy. That's not what makes you holy. What makes you holy is a life that you live. And so, this long conversation, you can read about it in Mark chapter 7. But right after that, Jesus, it's almost to prove a point, takes off and goes to another region. Out of this Galilean region, he goes up near the coast, the Mediterranean coast, to this town called Tyre. And that was not a Jewish area, was a Greek area, it was a very different kind of culture than what they had back in Galilee. And so he goes there, and the scripture says that he goes into this house, I guess to meet or to have dinner with some people, and he doesn't want anybody to know that he's there. You also may get the idea that Jesus is worn out.
Yeah.
Jesus, the humanity side of him, is tired. He wants to get away, goes to the coast. But you can't keep the secret of Jesus and his reputation down.
Right.
And so this woman, which Scripture tells us is of Syrophoenician background, that's her ethnicity. She is not Jewish. She does not follow the Jewish God, the one God. They're probably polytheistic in their worship. Anyway, she hears about Jesus and the miracles he performs, and she has a little daughter that is possessed by a demon. And so she read this to you, because I want the text rather than just tell it. I want to read this part. They said, now the woman was a Gentile of Syrophoenician origin. She begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. And this is what Jesus says to her. He says, let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. And that's one of those scriptures where you guys kind of tilt your head and go, say, what? What did he just say?
Yeah.
Did he just call this woman a dog? Did he just call this woman's poor child a dog?
Yeah.
And she responds to him and says, sir, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. And then he said to her, for saying that, you may go. The demon has left your daughter. And so he heals the daughter. Jesus likes her response, her kind of testimony of faith, as odd as it may be, that she has. And so this is one of those, it's just, why you've never heard it preached on or talked about. It's just like, it's kind of Jesus sounds harsh, almost rude. And so like, what's going on with this? This doesn't fit into some of the other stories. So how do we make sense of it?
Yeah.
And so as I approach this, and this is one, as a younger preacher, I would have skipped over too. But I was going to I'm going to make sense of this. So as you dig into the context of what's going on, you find out some things. First of all, the area that he had gone into was a very wealthy area, a different kind of lifestyle than the area that he's left, which is mostly poor. The people that lived around the Galilee region, most of the people that Jesus ministered to in that area were poor, of humble means. Most of them made their living by farming. A lot of food was produced in farms in and around that region, and also a lot of fishing, a lot of fishermen there. And so up in that region, though, there weren't a lot of farms. I'm guessing they had some fish because they're on the coast, but a lot of their food, most of their food, was imported in. Not unlike what happens to us today with stuff being exported. Yeah, so their food was coming from the Galilean region. It was exported in. They had this arrangement made up. They bought the food and it was exported in. But here's the thing. during lean times, they still demanded that those contracts or whatever they called them back then were honored. So the food from that area and what they were producing had to go to there. And so that left the people there
Even poorer.
even poorer because they didn't have food for their tables because all of it had to be sent up there I imagine in good times everything worked out well.
Right.
But when there was famine and when there was, drought or whatever, it would be a real hardship on this community.
Yeah.
And their children would go in. And I don't know, I couldn't determine from doing my research of whether or not that was happening right at that time. But Jesus grew up in this region. So you might wonder if like Jesus had been hungry as a child. I don't know that. This is just me reading between the lines.
Yeah.
I was that child, you
Yeah.
know. And so when Jesus comes in, when he talks about, when he says, let the children be fed first, okay? For it's not fair to take the children's food. This is what Jesus is talking to and casting it to the dogs. So Jesus is calling them out for this injustice about how this economic system was oppressing the people from the region where he was coming from, oppressing others.
Right.
And so that in that light, it makes it explains it a little bit, but also it seems more prophetic than it does rude. Jesus is calling out that. Now this woman, she probably doesn't know this. She's probably an unwitting partner in that.
Probably has no
but
real...
she is in the system, whether she likes it or not.
Right.
Just like, and this is what I put on the congregation, just like we are.
Yep.
Because we don't know how our food is made. We don't know about the migrant farmers or whoever, our systems.
Picked our grapes, whatever, yeah.
Who bring our food to our table, or stuff that gets imported from other parts of the world in particular. And there's been programs and stuff talking about like the Nike shoe factory and all that kind of stuff. But that the people, just because we have this demand, just like the Syrophoenicians, to get these cheap goods, and so we want to go to Walmart and be able to buy things cheap.
Yep.
But we have no idea how it might be affecting the
Somebody
lives of
else.
other people.
Yeah, and I can attest to that. It's like I don't really think about it. I'm more concerned, man, why are the prices of eggs up? You know what I mean? Not
Yeah.
where do these eggs come from? Who got them out of the chickens or whatever? You know what I mean? Like,
Right, and I imagine there
was
was a day and age where you had a relationship with the farmer, or the
Yeah.
the farmer down the road, or where there's stuff. And I'm not, trying to say that we have to know where everything comes from, but I do want to say that I think we should care
Yeah.
that it's happening in a just way, that people are being paid fairly,
Yep.
that people aren't being, child slave labor and all that kind of stuff, that the products that we are buying, that there's justice
Right.
there. So that's sort of the bigger picture there. So that was one kind of key point. And I will say that this was a shorter sermon for a number of reasons. We had a big announcement on Sunday talking about replacing the trailers and some ideas about that. So that took up some time. Then we had Holy Communion, and we commissioned a mission team.
Yeah.
So I knew I was going to have a shorter sermon. So, I had one big point around this sort of justice thing about the goods that we buy.
Yeah.
And that Jesus was not being insulting to the woman. He was calling out an injustice.
Yeah.
But the other, I think the part, and maybe the key takeaway for us, that is this woman's attitude. She has great humility, but she also has great endurance. She didn't give up.
Yeah.
She says, "Sir, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." And Jesus liked that. It was a kind of an odd profession of faith, that she knew that even just a touch of Jesus' power could heal her daughter. And so she hangs in there as enduring. Jesus responds and heals her daughter. And so in our lives, I know that oftentimes we give up too easily. I think sometimes we don't realize what God may be trying to teach us or form in us when we feel like our prayers aren't being answered.
Yeah. I even think in a space of, you said the word justice is, I'll ask you a question in just a second, but I think when we talk about justice, we all kind of have this idea of how we want to how we want justice to be served, how we want people to be treated, that type of stuff. But more often than not, if it doesn't impact our table or whatever, like we don't really do anything about it.
Yeah.
Like what role would you say Christians should play in justice? Whether it's racial injustice or
I do think we need to be paying attention to things about how the products that we're buying
yeah.
are being produced. And I know that seems impractical at times, but I think that there are folks out there and groups and organizations paying attention to that.
Yeah.
I know that the investments that I make through the group that I'm with, they're all they're supposed to be run through a filter of that, because there are some really bad practices, and in the standards, because we kind of live in a global world where a lot, if not most, of our goods are coming from somewhere else.
Yeah.
That we are paying attention to how they're made and where we're getting them from, and realizing that, like, even in the fact, I don't know if you ever do this, like I order something from Amazon and I'm going frustrated. It's like, it's going to take 2 days to get here.
Mm-hmm.
We don't realize that these demands that we have are that we have stuff that's really low cost.
Right.
And realizing
cheap and available.
Cheap and available and now.
Yeah.
Want now. I do feel like we need to be paying it more attention. Does that answer your question?
A little bit. Yeah. I guess I often wonder, at what point do Christians, because I feel like sometimes we're not so good at acting when society or whatever calls for it, because we're afraid of maybe standing up, or I don't know. And I guess I was just wondering more, is there a line at which, is it something that is like, if we just feel passionate about, like, I guess sometimes I even feel convicted, is like, should I be, I'm not for anything racially oriented. Should I be down marching with people and stuff like that? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, as a Christian, is that part of my responsibility?
Well, there.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, because you can't. Yeah. I think you have to pick and choose and see what your passions are.
Yeah.
I think we should care.
Yeah.
Let's go back to like where goods come from. I know there's been a lot of done, and like even in the Methodist Church, among like the migrant farmers, and making sure they're taken care of and
right.
are treated humanely and stuff like that. So I think we can find it would be impossible, I think, to respond to every need that's out there. But I do think it's important as followers of Christ that what are the things, and particularly as they come in front of us and fall on our radar,
yeah,
that and be making the kind of decisions and doing the kinds of things that are making sure that people are treated
fairly,
humanely,
safely,
and fairly, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And also I think walking in this humility that realize that our actions, whether we see it or not, may be affecting somebody else, even the way in which we buy the goods that we use.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's always an interesting idea is kind of, I know some people would call it our Christian witness, just how we act and how we understand and respond. How do you, well, maybe that's not a fair question. At what point do we say, like, we kind of come to Jesus in the same humility? Like, I think this lady she noticed something was going on with her kid, and recognized that this was something above her. But is there something that should have happened earlier? Do you know what I mean? Like, or
I mean, I don't know. We don't know much of her story. This is all we know.
yeah,
We don't know the circumstances. Her daughter is possessed by a demon. That's what we know.
yeah,
And I don't know if she's been to other healer kind of people. Or I'm sure as a parent, a parent who would care enough to cross all the boundaries that she did, a woman going into this place, talking to a man, which is, the social norms of that time, that would have crossed a lot of boundaries.
Right.
We would do whatever most of parents would to take care of our kid. And it seems to be that this woman is doing that, even to like speaking back up to Jesus, and saying, look, hey, I hear you.
Right.
That's bad. But even the dogs on the table get the children's crumbs. Mm-hmm. And so she appealed to that sense of Jesus. But, Jesus is talking in this big picture of the overarching injustice that was happening. And she is saying, like, well, even within that, overarching injustice, there is this thing happening with my child.
Right.
And so, Jesus responds to that and heals her.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's cool to see also like how much of Jesus followed him into this new area too. The stories people knew, like obviously she had to have some sort of inclination that there might be something about this guy. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, it was to say, he entered a house and did not want anyone to know he was there, yet he could not escape notice.
Yeah.
At this time, Jesus, his ministry, even in this foreign country, in this place,
right. That's
is preceding him.
Yeah.
But a woman whose daughter had an unclean spirit immediately heard about him.
Yeah.
And so that's that guy. News is traveling.
Right.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's cool to kind of watch how his influence kind of pushed.
And I guess it should be also noted a sentence in the scripture. She heard about him and she came and bowed down at his feet. So she's showing respect and reverence
right.
to him very much so.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the humility, I think, that you were talking about.
Yeah, the humility. And she wasn't Jewish, but yet she realized that there was something about Jesus that was divine and powerful.
It even speaks at a level of like humbling myself. I think sometimes I'll find myself in a space with my kids or whatever, where it's like, I know what I'm doing. I know how to help these situations. Maybe I need to humble myself more and ask God to come and help. And, maybe it's not as dire as like, I don't think my kids are demon possessed or anything like that. But I think even still, in the life we're currently living in, my kid, we're recording this after the shootings that happened last week. And, how do I humble myself to God and ask for that protection for my child, when she's nervous and stressed about it because she's hearing about it, you know what I mean, or whatever.
Sure.
So,
yeah, it's a tough time.
Yeah.
To be a parent, for sure. And I think you see that in this woman. That the love of a parent for a child and wanting to protect their child and wanting what's best for their child. But the witness that she has, first of her, seeing Jesus for being who Jesus was, but also that to stay with it, like she wasn't going to give up,
right?
And Jesus honored that, and I think that's a witness to us, is that we shouldn't give up.
Yeah,
we should keep praying. We should keep enduring. We should still keep seeking God, and from that, God's will be done.
Yeah, amen. Mm-hmm. Well, Dave, I think this has been a good conversation, especially about one of these stories that you don't hear talked about much at all. And I'm glad we can talk through it. Kind of pull some things out, talk through some things. And if you guys who are watching, listening, however you're taking this in, if you got any questions about it, you know where to ask it. We've got a chat section below our Facebook, our YouTube, all those good things. Dave, you talked about the bishop coming to preach. Do you want to say anything about that to the people?
Yeah, that's in 2 weeks. I think it's the 22nd. Yep. I hope I got that, 22nd. We've got one more Sunday before that. This week, looking at the story of Esther, so another woman hero in the Bible. Yep. Syrophoenician woman is not named, but we know Esther's name and how God used her. So we'll hear her story next week. And then Bishop Robin Dees, who is the area bishop for North Georgia in the United Methodist. We're honored to have her. Our district superintendent, Jessica, will also be with us that day. And so it's going to be a great day in worship. And you've heard her preach a couple of times. And she just has a way. She is just You hear this term bishop. She is so warm and open and include, and people just are immediately drawn to her and love her.
You definitely don't get like high up official vibes. You almost get like down home grandmother loving, caring vibes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And like motorcycle driving,
like cool grandmother vibes.
country music loving. Yeah, there's no pretense about her. Yet she's a very godly person, and joy and faith just exude from her. So
absolutely.
I'm really excited to have her here for our congregation and kind of lean into our United Methodist connection with that. So it'll be a great day.
It'll be great. And so mark your calendars, September 22nd, 10 o'clock, come join us. And that's definitely one. If you have to watch it online, I understand, there's some circumstances, but if you can get here, I'd recommend getting here.
Yeah, and I would say we're having a reception for her afterwards, and I gave it over to some women in the church, and I keep coming back, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger. So it's going to be a great day, and so stay around and get a chance to meet her and have some refreshments and stuff afterwards. And so it will be a great day to be here in person if you can be. So hope you can.
Very cool, very cool. Well, thank you, Dave, for all the insight and the time you took to create this sermon. And thank you guys so much for watching. And without further ado, we'll catch you guys next time.
All right. God bless everybody.